Want to know how you can take just one scale pattern and play it over every single musical key? Well, I'll show you. And the scale pattern that we're going to use is what's called the G pentatonic pattern. It goes like this. Now, right now you might be thinking, hey dude, you just called that the G pentatonic pattern, but you played it in the key of A. What gives? Well, the reason it's called the G pentatonic pattern is because it's referring to just that, the pattern, not the actual key. So if we look at a G chord, right, like an open G chord, this is just like the form of it, and I'm playing it like this with my fingers configured this way, just to kind of show you that when you outline the pentatonic pattern, right, it falls in line perfectly with the open G chord form. So that's when we refer to the pattern itself, the actual finger pattern, not the musical key, right? But the actual finger pattern is based on that open G chord form, right? So that's why it's called the G pentatonic pattern, but not to be confused with if you play that pattern in, let's say, the key of A, like this. Right, so I just played the G pentatonic pattern, but I played it in the key of A, the actual musical key, where the pitch lies, right? That's in the key of A. So that just clears that up, so you don't get confused as to why I'm referring something as a G pentatonic pattern, but then playing it in a key that's not G. Now you also might be thinking, okay, well, I mean, I've played that scale pattern a million times. I know how to play that. How am I supposed to take that and use it in every single key? Well, that's exactly what I'm about to show you. So when it comes to patterns, right, when we think about scale patterns, to kind of take the musical context out of it for just a second, we're thinking purely in the physical realm here. Okay, when it comes to a finger pattern, that's what our fingers and our muscle memory and all that stuff adhere to, right? When we take our fingers to the strings on our guitar and we play out that scale, we're following a pattern, right? So we really want to think of it just in terms of a pattern. The musical stuff will come later, okay? So you want to think of it as a pattern. So, okay, we got it. It's a pattern. What does that mean? What it means is it's a movable pattern, okay? The guitar is set up in a way where the fretboard is essentially like a bunch of different roads, and you can think of scales as like routes, right? Like ways to map your way around the fretboard. But the cool thing about the pentatonic pattern is that you can easily adapt it to any key just by using one string as a reference point, and you want to think of the pattern moving across the fretboard like a conveyor belt. Meaning like I can play the pattern in A, for example, right? I can, make the conveyor belt go backwards and then go down, play it in G all of a sudden. Then I can make the conveyor belt go all the way up here and I'm playing it in D now all of a sudden. So it's the exact same pattern, but adapted to different musical keys. And like I said, we're just using one string as a reference point, which I will explain in just a second. So the string we're going to be using is the low E string, okay? Or the sixth string or the fattest string, however you identify, the top string here is going to be the string that we use. And that's all we're going to need. We don't need any of the other strings. Reason being is when we play the pentatonic pattern, typically we like to start it, from start to finish. The first note is on the low E string. So all we really need is the first note of the pentatonic pattern to dictate what musical key that we're playing in, okay? So all we're going to need to know is how to name the notes on the fretboard on just one string, the low E string. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing we're going to start with is the open E, right? The lowest note on the low E string. We know that that note is E because that string is literally called the low E string. So we know that this is a low E, right? So we know that's E. So if we think about the musical alphabet, right, it starts from A and goes to G, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you got all the sharps and flats in between, which we will get into in a second. So we start in E. So if we move in order of the alphabet, okay, we have E, and then what comes after E in the alphabet? F, right? And then what comes after F? G. So we're going to start with the three notes E, F, G, and here they are. Open E, first fret is F, third fret is G. So remember that. E, F, G. E, F, G. All right? Just play that over and over again until you commit it to memory, right? We know that this is E, this is F, and this is G. And once we've hit G, we've reached the end of the musical alphabet. It starts over, right? There's no H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P notes, right? So when we end at G, we got to start over at A. So the next notes, the next three notes are going to be A, B, C, and they start here. Starting on the 5th fret of the low E string, that's A. Then the 7th fret, that's B. And then the 8th fret is C. So you'll notice that we're skipping frets, and I'll explain why. This is kind of where the sharps and flats come into play. But we're going to start with just these main notes here, okay? We got E, F, G, and then A, B, C. So play A, B, C over and over again. Commit that to memory too. A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. And next in line, we have the note D, which comes after C in the alphabet, right? So D is found on the 10th fret of the low E string. And that's it. So we have E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Okay? That's all we need for now. Now, when you go beyond that, okay, when you reach the 12th fret, you know, on your guitar on the fretboard, when you see 2 fret markers, most guitars have this. You'll see 2 fret markers on the side as opposed to the 1 that you'll see in odd numbers, right? The 1 even number on a guitar is typically the 12th fret, right? So that's marked anyway. So you have the 2 fret markers here. That marks the 12th fret. Now the reason that's marked is because that's when a new octave begins. So we've started with low E, right? Then we worked our way up. E, F, G, A, B, C, D. What comes after D in the alphabet? E, correct, right? So E starts on the 12th fret here. Now, this is the same note as this. The exact same note. Just in 2 different octaves, right? So, if you're kind of catching on, you'll notice that the pattern starts over. E, F, G, A, B, C, right? And then I kind of run out of frets, so I can't reach D. But that's okay, because we've already covered the entire musical alphabet, and then some, just leading up to the 12th fret here on the low E string, okay? So we have E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and then E again. Okay? So we're going to start there with the main notes, and now we're going to talk about the sharps and flats. Sharps and flats are very simple. Just think of them this way. A sharp is when a note is higher by what's called a half tone, and a flat is when it's lower by a half tone, okay? So on the guitar, you can think of it like in the distance of frets, okay? Let's start with F, for example, right? Remember when we played E, F, G? We skipped the 2nd fret here. So whatever could that fret note be, right? Starting with F, if we're here in F and then we're moving up, that becomes F sharp, okay? So it's moving up in pitch, right? So we have E, F, F sharp. But check this out. We also have G right here, okay? And if we're moving, let's say, going down, right, in pitch, we're starting on G, and we're moving down. This isn't F sharp, it's G flat. So G, G flat, F, E. So it all depends on the context, whether you're moving up or moving down in pitch, and that determines, because F sharp and G flat are the exact same note. How you name them is based on the context of going up or down, right, in pitch. So now let's move on. So we have E, F, F sharp, G. So we're just going to be moving up in this case, right? So what would come after G? G sharp, right? So we have G sharp right there on the 4th fret of the low E string. So we have E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, all right? Then next comes, here we have A, B, C, right? So we've skipped this fret here, the 6th fret of the low E string. So let's find out what that is. This is A. This has got to be, you guessed it, A sharp, right? So we have E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp. Then we have B. And then what comes next, we have A, B, C. So C comes immediately after B. So there's no sharp or flat in between B and C here, right? But there is between C and D. Here's C, and here's D. So this would be C sharp, C, C sharp, D. Okay, we're almost done. Remember how we get to E on the 12th fret? So we have 2 frets left, okay, and we know this is E. So in between D and E, if we're moving up, what would this middle note be? That would be D sharp, D, D sharp, E. And there it is. Now, if we were to move down, starting from the high E here, so we would do E, and then this wouldn't be D sharp, it would be E flat, and then D, then moving down, D flat, and then moving down, C, then B, then B flat, A, A flat, G, G flat, F, E. Okay? And like I said, that covers the entire musical alphabet, including all the sharps and flats. So remember, sharps and flats can be the same exact note, but how you name them is dependent on whether the context of going up in pitch. But also just know that if, let's say, you're starting a key, right? For example, the key of B flat, it's a very popular key in blues music, right? No one really calls it A sharp. I've never been to a blues jam or any kind of situation where I played a song in B flat and people said, let's play it in A sharp. They always say B flat. So some people have preferences on what they default to, right? But just know that just because someone says this is in the key of B flat, it also means it's in the key of A sharp. They're the same note. It's just how it's named, okay? So when the note has, if a sharp and flat note are the same note, just know that they're the same note. That's the important thing that you know. And then how they're named is, you could say, up for debate. Just depend, if you're starting off with a key, you're not really talking about context of moving up or down, right? But if you are moving along the fretboard, it is important to think of it that way. Just kind of helps you understand them a little bit better. Okay, so now that we know how to name all of the notes on the low E string, right, up to the 12th fret here, we can take the pentatonic pattern and literally apply it over every single one of these notes. All we have to do is start it on a particular note. So let's say we wanted to start it in F. We know that's F, right? So now let's play the scale. So I just played that exact same finger pattern, right? The G pentatonic pattern. We got to remember that when we're thinking of patterns, it's about the finger movement, right? How the fingers adhere to the pattern on the fretboard. So we sort of compartmentalized the physical aspect of it, right? The finger pattern aspect. And then we combined it with the mind part, right? The mental part of knowing which note on the low E string we started in. And that's how we can instantly find out what key we're playing it in. So let's just pick a random, I've been saying B flat, right? So let's just find the G pentatonic pattern in the key of B flat. So if we were to find B flat, remember how we have A, B, C? That kind of helps because when you separate them from E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and then you're thinking about sharps and flats, you can start by picking a group of notes that's closest, right? So we just said B flat. So I know B is part of the A, B, C, 3-note pattern here. So I'm going to start with B, right? And then move down 1 fret. Now I'm in B flat. So I'm going to use my first finger to play that note because that's how I play the G pentatonic pattern. But we're starting it in the key of B flat. So now I'm going to play through the pattern, but it's going to be in the key of B flat. Okay, let's pick another one. Let's pick another note. Let's do C sharp. Okay, so I know where C is. A, B, C, right? So if we want to sharpen that note, all we have to do is just move it up 1 fret, right? Because remember, there's a free fret in between C and D. So moving up to it, that's C sharp. So adhering to the pentatonic pattern, right? Starting on the C sharp note. And I've just played C sharp minor pentatonic. Okay, so now we know how to take the G pentatonic pattern, right, and move it to any musical key just based on the notes on the low E string. Now, that's awesome, right? But if we're trying to make music, right, if you're trying to play a solo or jam over a jam track or even just jam with your buddies, right, someone's going to pick a musical key and you got to play that scale, but you can't just play the scale, right, because that's not really music. That's more of an exercise. So I'm going to teach you a few licks that fit perfectly in the pentatonic pattern, and you can take those exact same licks and move them over any key that you want. I'm actually going to demonstrate how you can play these exact same licks in different keys over different styles of backing tracks. It's going to be awesome. So let's start by teaching you these licks. First lick's relatively simple. It's kind of a walk up the scale, but it's done in a tasty way so it doesn't seem like you're walking up the scale. It actually feels like you're making music, but it's really subtle, which is cool. So I'm going to be using the G pentatonic pattern in the key of A for reference, okay? So we're going to be here. Okay, so we're going to learn the licks in that key, and then I'll show you how to move them to the different keys. Okay, so the first lick is pretty cool because it's really simple in the sense that it's kind of like walking up the scale, but it's done with purpose. It's done with, it doesn't sound like an exercise. It actually sounds like a lick, and it goes like this. So as you can see, I essentially walked up the scale, but I did it with style. I added a couple little nuances in there to make it not seem like an exercise. So this way is if you're used to playing the scale and you're really good at playing the scale up and down, but not how to like use it to make music, this is a great sort of jumping off point for you. So we start with obviously the 5th fret on the low E string, the starting note, which is A, right? Then with our pinky, we're going to reach over to the 8th fret of the low E string, and we're going to do what's called a blues bend. It's a very, very slight bend. It's very slight. It's slight enough to where it almost doesn't go to a specific pitch, right? But don't worry so much about the feel of it. Just think more of just like it's like an almost bend, and it's very, very slight and it's very brief. So you're going right. Okay, so we're going 5, blues bend on 8, and then 5, 7 on the A string, and then we're doing 5 on the D string, and then we're going to do a hammer-on to the 7th fret on the D string. Now, a hammer-on is if we play the 5th fret on the D string, and we let that sustain, we're going to use the note that's sustaining, and then with our finger, we're going to literally hammer it on to the 7th fret on that same string. So the first part is like this. And there's a little bit, like, think of the timing on it, right? So the timing and those little subtleties right there make it seem more like a musical line as opposed to just playing the scale, like I said. But that's the first half. The second half essentially climbs up the scale another octave in sort of the same style. So where we start on the 7th fret on the D string, and then we're going to do a blues bend again, but on the 5th fret of the G string, right? So remember, it's a slight, almost bend, right? It's inches from being a bend, but it's just very slight, right? And it's very quick. So we go, and then 7th fret on the G string, and then 5th fret on the B string, then 8th fret on the B string, and then we land on the 5th fret of the high E string. And sustain that note, and if you can, give it a little vibrato. So the whole lick is like this. Now, lick number 2 gets right into it. It goes like this. So what I was doing was this repeating pattern, okay? We're starting from the 8th fret on the high E string, and we're doing what's called a pull-off. So we pick the note on the 8th string, on the 8th fret, and we let that sustain, and then we slightly pull with that same finger that we used to fret that note. It's a slight pull. You don't want to be too aggressive with it. And then we just let that note continue sustaining as it moves on to a new note. So from the 8th fret here to the 5th fret. That's a pull-off. All right. So what we're doing is we do one pull-off, and then we play the 5th fret on the B string. So the best way to do that is to do what's called barring. So with your first finger, bar it across the B and the high E strings, okay? And just keep it there, right? Pretend like you just glued your finger to the fretboard and it's stuck there, right? And the only thing that's really moving is your pinky. So you're doing the pull-off, and then you're picking the note on the B string, right? And then you don't have to actually move your first finger at all. All right, and we repeat this pattern like 4 times. All right, and then approaching the 5th time, we do this. So we do. So what I'm doing is I reach over with my 3rd finger to the 8th fret on the B string, okay? And I do a slight bend. I'm attempting to do a whole step bend. But it happens so fast that it's okay if you don't necessarily nail that pitch, right? It happens so fast. So think of it this way. You just want to bend, and you want the sound of your bend to actually register, right? So not quite like a blues bend, right? But you want to reach. So you're bending up from the pitch of this note here to this note. So as best you can, because you got to do it quickly. So, right, so we bend it up, and then with our first finger, we're going to catch the fifth fret on the high E string here. Oop, right? Okay, so once we do that, so it's like we're bending to that note, which is also this note, same note, just on different strings, right? So we're bending to it and then landing on it in a more secure place. We don't have to bend up to it, right? It just creates this cool sound, right? So, I mean, there's so many great rock and roll records where you've heard a lick like that, right? So, right? Then once we're here on the 5th fret of the high E string, our third finger is going to reach over to the 7th fret of the G string, and then we play the 5th fret. So it's like, all right? Might even be easier to just do a pull-off. So remember we talked about the same thing, right? As that, but we're doing it with these two fingers on the G string. All right? And then finally, we're almost out of the woods with this lick. We're going to do this kind of like, this kind of lick has a lot of attitude. All right? So what we're doing is on the 7th fret of the G string, we're bending. The cool thing is with this bend is it's not exactly clear whether we're bending from here to here or from here to here. Because both notes technically work. They just kind of, like I said, they have this attitude about it, right? So I want you to bend, look at it this way. Bend somewhere in between from this note to this note and this note to this note, right? Right? Don't go too much, like, you don't want to do that. Or you don't want to do like a blues bend where you almost can't hear it. Right? You want to go, get a little bit of oomph. Right? And then we pull off to the 5th fret of the G string. Right? And then we do another pull off from 7 to 5. So that's a very vocal kind of line. Right? Then we're finally going to land on the 7th fret of the D string and hit that twice. So all of lick number 2, I'll play it slow, goes like this. And then with that last note on the 7th fret on the D string there, just give it some nice vibrato. I like to shake the guitar a little bit, lets the guitar do more of the work. Lick number 3 is a fun one. This one uses what are called double stops. Double stops are when you essentially play 2 notes at once, right? And in the case of like rock and blues, double stops in the pentatonic scale are typically found between the G and the B strings. So the lick goes like this. So those double stops were these notes. Right? So it starts with, on the 5th fret, we're barring again, right? From this G string to the B string. Then we're playing 7th fret on the D string. So, and then with our same finger here, the 3rd finger, after we play 7th fret on the D string, we're going to play 7th fret on the G and the B string. So we're going to bar it. So I like to kind of roll my finger over like, okay, so that just makes it easier to, instead of going like, you know, I have to make it more instantaneous. So I got to go, all right? So we're going 5, 7, 7, right? Then we go back to 5, and we're going to give that a slight blues bend. So we're going to, while barring both notes, it helps to kind of release your hand here, and then just like kind of really pull with your thumb and your first finger. Almost like you're moving like that, like a slight sort of scooped sort of motion, like a scooping motion. And remember, it's a very slight bend. So it's, right? Then we're going to play 7, 5 on the D string. Kind of reminds me of a certain Peter Frampton song. All right? And then the final part of the lick, we go from 5 to 7. We hammer on the A string. Then we play the 5th fret on the D string. Then we reach over with our pinkies and we're going to play the 8th fret on the low E string. We're going to give it a slight blues bend, just like in lick number 1. So, and then end it right there on the 5th fret of the low E string. So we have. And finally, lick number 4 goes like this. So this one kind of does the sort of Chuck Berry thing, right, in the very beginning. And keep in mind, everything that we've been playing so far, and for the rest of this lick, these are all perfectly contained within the G pentatonic pattern, right? So it's going to be really fun when we move these to different musical keys. So you can think of it this way. I'm teaching you 4 licks, but you can multiply that by how many musical keys there are, and that's actually how many licks you have. It's really cool. So anyway, I digress. Let me resume teaching you this lick. So we're starting on 7th fret of the G string, and we're bending up to here, right? To the 9th fret in pitch, right? Right? Then we're going to be barring on the 5th fret with our first finger on the B and the high E strings. And we're repeating that multiple times. So I think it goes 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So we just repeat that 4 times, as I said. And then we're going to do a couple cool triplet runs. And they're a little fast. What makes them triplets, that's the first triplet, 1, 2, 3. Right? Then the second triplet is 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's 2 triplet runs there. So they go like this. Starting on the 8th fret of the B string, we do a pull off from 8th fret to 5th fret. Then we land on 7th fret of the G string. It's our first triplet. Then our second triplet goes like this. So we do a hammer on from the 5th fret to the 7th fret on the G string, right? And then we land on the 5th fret of the B string with our first finger. That's our second triplet. So we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And they happen kind of fast in the context of this lick. But when you think of them like 2 triplets, it kind of makes it a little bit easier. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we finally landed on the 7th fret of the D string. So to recap that lick, it goes like this. All right, now that we got some sweet licks under our fingers, let's talk about how we're going to adapt these in different keys, okay? Not only different keys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how you can use these 4 licks I'm going to use 3 different backing tracks. They're going to be 3 different musical keys, but they're also going to be 3 different musical genres too, just to show you how versatile this scale shape really, truly is. When it comes to Western music, man, you could play the pentatonic pattern over virtually anything. Even some Eastern music, because the pentatonic pattern, believe it or not, started in the Far East. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But I will say this, what's also really cool is that the licks themselves, right? We played them at a certain, in a certain key. We played them at a certain sort of tempo and stuff. Each of these backing tracks is going to have different speeds, different feels, different vibes altogether. So what I'm going to be doing is playing the same licks, but I'll be adapting the timing and like just little things like that. I'm still playing the licks note for note, but I'm adapting little things just to make them blend in with the track, much better. But what that does is that shows you with those same licks, you make those little changes and all of a sudden they're like brand new licks you're playing over a different backing track. So it's really cool. So I'm going to start with a rock backing track in the key of A. Check it out. So right there, I was just playing those licks right over that track. We learned the licks in A. The backing track was in A, and it was a rock backing track. They're very rocky licks. It just worked really, really well. It was almost too easy, but as a first example, I think that worked pretty great. So I was using licks, using the pentatonic pattern. They sounded great. I didn't have to change really too much. Just had to make sure my timing was right. You know, that worked great. Now, for the next track, we're going to be doing a blues shuffle in the key of C. So a rock track with a hard, steady beat and a blues shuffle track have different feels. So I'm going to need to adapt these licks a little bit differently. So it may not be quite as easy to play those licks over that track, but I'm going to show you. All you have to do is make little changes to the timing and the feel, and the licks will work perfectly. So let's check that out. So right there, the feel was a little bit different, so I had to make adjustments accordingly, kind of change up the timing here and there, and even when to start the licks, I was kind of messing around on either starting them on the downbeat or the upbeat. You know, honestly, you can put these licks anywhere you want. I put it to you to experiment and find out what actually sounds good. If you play it in a different place than I played it, and it sounds good to you, by all means, use that. That's how you make it your own, you know? So there's an example. I used the same licks. You know, I did it in order sort of at first, and then I was just kind of changing up the order just based on how I felt. But a lot of these licks are very reusable, and when you use them in different orders, it kind of breathes new life into them, makes them feel new, right? Not repetitive. So that's the cool thing about them. So that's how they sound over a shuffle track in C. But what if they were to be played over a hard rock track in the key of E? I think we should try that. I'm going to be moving the pentatonic pattern to the high E, right? So starting on the 12th fret, the very last note that we've reached here, right? At least before the pattern starts all over again. So technically, you know all these notes because they're exact same as here, right? So the pentatonic pattern in the key of E would go like this. Okay? And that's just, again, to show you where I found where to play the licks, right? So in the beginning, I played them in A, right? I knew they were there because we learned them in A, so it was easy. I didn't have to move. Now in C, I had to remember A, B, C, right? So there's C. Then I had to start the pattern there, right? So now we're going to be checking out the key of E, and then we're going to be using this pattern here. Now technically, we could use the low E octave, but that uses open strings. We want to keep these licks. You know, these licks require the use of, you know, our whole picking hand, or our playing hand, right? So it's better to just use them up here. And besides, when people play an E, especially in a hard rock track, it's typically in the higher register. So let's check that out. That was fun. That really made these licks sound even meaner, right? All I did was change the backing track, right? Change the key, played the same licks, changed the timing a little bit. There were times where it sounded better at like a slower speed, like especially those fast pull-off licks. But then there were times where I play it at double speed and it sounds just as cool. You know, I was trying to play them in all kinds of different ways just to show you, and different orders just to show you that those licks can work, you know? So we played them over 3 different backing tracks in 3 different keys with 3 different styles: rock, blues, and heavy metal, and it all sounded awesome. So just as a quick recap over how I was able to play those licks in the different keys, All I did was start with the pattern, right? The physical pattern. Okay, we already know that, and we know that the licks are inside of that, right? We just learned that. So what I did next was I would find the note that I'm looking for, right? If we want to find A, remember, E, F, G, A. There we go, A, B, C, A. There we go. Started there, found the pattern, and then found the licks within it, right? And then when I was finding C, A, B, C, right? There's C. Found the pattern there, right? And then found the licks within it, and then did that. Change up the timing and all that stuff. And then in E, right? Had to find E. So we have A, B, C, D, E. Boom, there we go. Found that, played the same pattern, same G pentatonic pattern, right? Then played it in the key of E, played the licks, because they're all inside that same pattern. And that was all I did. And then just while I was listening to the track, just changing up the licks and the timing and the feel. So this is an opportunity for you to take these concepts and these ideas, and when you're practicing them over the backing tracks, which by the way, the links for each of the backing tracks will be in the description box to this video, so that you can practice them yourself. You can try doing different like little subtleties, adding your own spin on it. You know, like I said, if you do it in a different way and it sounds good to you, that's awesome. That's what I want you to do, right? That's how the creative process begins, and you're actually making something musical instead of just kind of parroting like what I'm doing. And with all this, you can take just one scale pattern and play it in any musical key that anyone throws at you, even different musical genres, and you learn some badass licks to go along with it. But now, now, I get to show you a way you can take it a step further. A free guitar cheat sheet that takes what you just learned and will skyrocket it to the next level. Imagine being able to quickly and confidently solo just like the pros over any musical key you can think of. That's exactly what this cheat sheet is going to show you. So make sure you click right here so you can claim your free copy right now. And next, don't forget to smack the subscribe button and hit the bell notification icon so you can stay up to date on all the new lessons we got coming at you. And now I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. I'm Eddie with Guitar Mastery Method, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.